It feels kind of wrong to be doing this sort of thing in your wife's camping car.
I know, right? Naomi really came through with a great alternative to a hotel. I had installed a small camera in the camping car which captured the scene of my husband and a college girl cheating. Fuming with anger, I bravely climbed into the driver's seat while the affair was ongoing. What? Huh? I threw the clothes of the two cheaters out of the car and started the engine.
Ah!
With a straight face, I drove off, while the naked couple cried and screamed.
Hey! Where are you going?
It's obvious. Think of the place you two would least want to go to.
That's where we're heading,
the final destination. Shall we enjoy a drive to hell together? Saying that, I smiled at the pale-faced duo. My name is Naomi, a woman in her late 40s who enjoys outdoor activities and is a homemaker. My husband, Griffin, is of the same age and we met at a campsite. We hit it off and started dating, which eventually led to our marriage. We work together and have the same hobbies, and although we were not blessed with children, we have had a good life. I had a little dream of my own, that is to buy a camping car and to travel around with Griffin. And the other day, part of that came true. I took out a loan and purchased a camping car. When the camping car was delivered to our garage, it became a small topic of conversation among our neighbors. From children to the elderly, they would ask things like, "What is this?" or "How cool?" All we had to do was take time off from work and start exploring. Just as I was thinking that way, my work started to get busier. I had to work overtime and on weekends more frequently, and although I wasn't completely without time off, I couldn't take extended periods off. It was a bit frustrating, but I knew that having something to look forward to would motivate me to work harder. So, for the time being, I decided to concentrate on my work. Moreover, I occasionally enter the camping car and enjoy the camping mood while doing routine maintenance. While I was sitting in the driver's seat of the camping car in the garage, contemplating where to go next, suddenly I heard a knocking sound from glass door. Startled, I looked over and saw a young woman standing there.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm a neighbor of yours and, if you don't mind, could you show me the interior of this camper?
I listened to her story and learned that the young woman, named Teresa, was a college student who enjoyed camping as a hobby. She had heard from the neighborhood that a camping car had been delivered to a nearby house and came to see its exterior. When she arrived in front of our house, she noticed that I was lost in thought while sitting in the driver's seat and spoke to me without thinking. I was pleased to hear that even young women were interested in camping cars nowadays, and I wanted to show her the interior of our camping car. However, I suddenly became aware of the time. I had been working late, and after coming home and having dinner, I spent some time checking out the camping car, so it was already past midnight. As worried as I was about letting a young girl stay out so late, I decided to reschedule for another day. It's totally fine to show you, but it's late today, so come back when it's light. When I said so, Teresa responded,
I understand.
And then she left with a happy face. I realized that we hadn't made any specific arrangements regarding the date and time, but I figured we would run into each other in the neighborhood eventually. At the time, I was feeling optimistic. Several weeks passed. I had completely forgotten about the college student and was planning to relax in the camping car that day. However, the electricity wasn't working. I seen that the auxiliary battery wasn't charged. Did I really use up that much electricity? While feeling skeptical, I turned on a flashlight and inspected the living area. Immediately, I sensed that something was off. The place wasn't ransacked, but it felt like someone other than me had used it. I was particularly bothered by an unfamiliar odor that I had never smelled in the camping car before. I wondered if Griffin had used it, but then he would be the first to say how it felt to use. He always talked in detail about any new camping gear he had used, so it was probably not Griffin. It was then that I finally remembered the college student. But if it was her, she could have just asked me and I would have let her see inside. There was no need for her to break in. I briefly considered contacting the police, but there was no clear evidence of a break-in or damage. I decided to buy a small camera online for security and installed it in the living space for the time being. I would start it up and set it before going to work and collect it when I came back. For a while, there were days when I checked and nothing was recorded. And then, a month later, on one night after finishing my overtime work, I collected the small camera as usual and inserted the SD card into my computer. Was my suspicion just my imagination? For the past month, nothing strange had been captured on the camera, so I was considering giving up this habit. I hadn't told Griffin about the hidden camera. I decided to keep him under suspicion for the time being. However, it was not fair to keep suspecting him like this. Thinking so, I pressed the play button, and there was a shocking scene that appeared. My initial suspicion had been correct. Griffin and the female college student, Teresa, were in the living space of the camping car. Both of them were naked. I see why Griffin can't tell me what he thinks of the camper either. Of all people, it had to be a female college student. In any case, I cannot forgive that they committed adultery in my camping car. I have decided that I will make them suffer in hell, no matter what. Since that day, I started going to a detective in a law firm on my days off, pretending to Griffin that I was working overtime. I asked the detective to investigate Teresa's university, address, and the frequency of infidelity. I also consulted with a lawyer about this matter and requested advice on claiming damages in the creation of a certified document. The detective's work was quick, and information such as the address was obtained in about a week. And it turned out that Teresa was living alone for her commute to university. I continued to have the detective investigate and learn more about Teresa's infidelity tendencies. It seemed that she only engaged in acts inside the camping car when I was away for work on weekends. Otherwise, they seemed to use hotels or go to Teresa's house after work. The thought of Griffin moving into the female college student's residence made me nauseous. What on earth is he doing at his age? However, I'm not just letting Griffin's infidelity slide. I've almost completed my revenge preparations. All that's left is to wait for the right opportunity. On that day, I once again told Griffin that I had to work on my day off and left the house. Then 1 hour later, I sneaked back into the garage without making any noise. The windows of the camping car, front door, and rear were all closed with curtains. I approached the camping car and listened carefully. Then I heard Griffin and Teresa's wild voices coming from inside. Although I felt like everything was turning black in front of me, I couldn't stop now. I opened the shutter of the garage. And then, even before the shutter had fully opened, my parents rushed in and quickly got into the camping car. I had asked my parents to help keep an eye on Griffin and Teresa to ensure they wouldn't escape when I planned this operation. From inside, I could hear Griffin and Teresa exclaiming, "Oh no!" I quickly got into the driver's seat. There were the discarded clothes of the two of them on the passenger seat. I threw them outside and started the engine.
Naomi, what are you doing? I thought you were working. Why are your dad and mom here?
Griffin shouted at me from the back seat of the car. Teresa also spoke up.
Stop it! I'll call the police!
I had no choice but to turn to them and speak. And quietly now, we're all going for a drive. I already know how many times you two have been up to no good there. I even have evidence. So feel free to call the police, shake off my parents, and interfere with me however you like. But in the event of an accident, who do you think will be embarrassed to be found naked? Think about that. After hearing my words, the two of them went silent as if they had given up everything. Well then, off we go on a hellish drive. After driving for a while, I heard a voice say, "Hey!" I had been sitting in silence along with everyone else in the car, making the atmosphere feel like hell. But Teresa broke the silence.
Hey, where are you taking us? This is kidnapping, isn't it? If you turn back now, we won't make a scene. Let's go back.
I can't believe she's still not giving up and speaking as if I'm the one at fault. What a woman. I feel like being mean, so I laughed and said, "Where do you think we're going? It's obvious we're all going to hell." Teresa lets out a small scream. By the way, this isn't kidnapping. On the contrary, I'm trying to send them back home. Look outside. If we keep driving for a while longer, you might get an idea of where we're headed. It's probably a familiar view. Teresa started shaking when she saw the outside scenery through the slightly open curtains.
I can't take it. This is my hometown. Please, at least spare my parents' house. My parents can't find out about this.
Teresa said that, and there was a sound of something falling on the floor. It seemed like she knelt down on the floor naked. However, unfortunately, I had no obligation to listen to Teresa's demands. I didn't want to hear any annoying apologies, so I turned up the volume on the audio and continued driving. When we arrived at Teresa's home, two people who appeared to be her parents came out of the front door. I didn't get out of the driver's seat and just rolled down the window. "Can I ask you to get in the back?" I called out to them. I had sent a registered mail to Teresa's parents with my contact information. That's why I had informed them about my visit here today. Teresa's parents nodded in response to my question and opened the door to the living area. "Teresa!" They screamed in shock. "Oh, I'm sorry for my indecent appearance. You see, I was brought here during Teresa and Griffin's little rendezvous. If you have any complaints, please tell your daughter and Griffin themselves. Oh, and if you two want to finish what you started, feel free to do it in front of your parents." Looking back, I think I was pretty crazy at that time. But being cheated on in a dream-like camping car was just too painful for me to bear. The hellish drive wasn't over yet. The real test was just about to begin. After leaving Teresa's parents' house, I got on the highway and kept driving relentlessly. Griffin seemed to have an idea of where we were going next and remained silent, still looking down. Teresa tried to make excuses to her parents from time to time, but was met with a slap from her father every time. As for my parents, they were carefree and snoring away in the back. After driving for about 4 hours, we arrived at Griffin's house in the middle of the dark night. His parents must have heard the car and came out just like Teresa's parents did earlier. I had also sent a certified letter and informed them beforehand that we would visit today. We were allowed to enter the house, and Griffin and Teresa covered themselves with a blanket. After everyone calmed down, I explained what happened and how I felt uncomfortable in the camping car. I was able to capture the scene of Griffin's infidelity by installing a small camera, and it turned out that it wasn't just a one-time thing, but a planned affair that had been going on repeatedly. The smell I sensed in the camper was likely the scent of bodily fluids such as sweat. For a while after realizing this, every time even a faint whiff of Griffin's smell came around, I felt like vomiting. But there was one thing I still couldn't figure out. Where did Griffin and Teresa meet? Can you explain to us exactly how this happened? With that, I glared at Griffin, and he started speaking while looking down.
It was the day when you, Naomi, were working on your day off. Teresa came to visit while I was relaxing at home. I didn't know who she was, but she said she had made an appointment with you to show her the camper van. So, I showed her around instead. And then...
As Griffin was about to say something, Teresa interrupted him in a loud voice.
At that time, I was forcibly attacked by that person, so it's not cheating. Rather, I'm also a victim. I'm not the one at fault. I'm being threatened.
Griffin started to argue.
What are you talking about? Rather, weren't you the one who invited me? I certainly had a desire for you, Teresa, but I tried to resist it. Didn't you make advances towards me and tell me it was okay?
From the audio recorded by the small camera, it can be deduced that the story that Teresa was attacked by Griffin is almost certainly a lie. The investigation revealed that she had been with various men, including classmates, her boss, and strangers she met while camping. In short, she was a promiscuous girl who would sleep with anyone good-looking. It was an unpleasant argument, and it wasn't just me who couldn't bear the argument. Each of her parents scolded Griffin and Teresa. Well, it doesn't matter who instigated the other, the horny ape or the slut. All I want is for him to sign this agreement and divorce papers. That's it. The agreement stipulates that they pay $50,000 each for emotional distress and $60,000 for the cost of the camper they wrecked. I don't want to use the camping car that you guys did all sorts of things in anymore. If you refuse this condition, what will you do if I contacted your workplace, Griffin, and Teresa's university about this incident? At this, Griffin's parents said, "You deal with your own mess. You're disowned." Meanwhile, Teresa's parents begged for mercy, saying, "Please, spare us that much," as they pressed their heads to the floor and apologized. By the way, my parents seemed to be suppressing their laughter at Griffin and Teresa's disgraceful behavior. I brought them along as watchdogs, but I never expected them to stay so quiet. Griffin and Teresa, realizing there was nothing else to be done, reluctantly signed the agreement. Of course, I also made him sign the divorce papers. After finally being free, I felt like there was no reason for me to stay in that house any longer. I said to my in-laws, "I apologize for causing trouble. Please feel free to do as you wish," and left the house. What surprised me was the behavior of my parents, who had been nothing but spectators until then. My father put his hand on Griffin's shoulder and spoke to him.
Griffin, you're still young. How was it, fooling around with young girls as you pleased? Must have been fun, right? I wonder if you had a blast living in paradise. Well, what's waiting for you from now on is hell. You paid $100,000 and even your parents have abandoned you. You still have the house loan, don't you? I wonder how you're going to live from now on. It's quite amusing.
He had a big smile on his face as he said this. My mother also took one look at Griffin. "Naomi is kind. If it was me, I would have cut them off without hesitation with scissors." "I'm not saying what, though," she said as she made a parting shot. My parents are still unpredictable, but it felt a little refreshing. Afterwards, after the divorce, I moved back in with my parents. As usual, they were taking things at their own pace, but when I told them that the compensation had been paid, my father said jokingly,
"All right then, let's go out and eat some delicious food with that money."
I can't believe he's saying something like that. However, I don't mind such jokes. I bought a new car, customized for camping with the compensation money. I don't want to buy a camper van again since it only brings back bad memories. However, I couldn't shake off the desire to go camping. Now that I'm single and have more free time, I enjoy solo camping on weekends.